Fate is such a fickle thing. Sometimes a simple change of direction could change the fate of an individual. King Vegeta knew this very well. While his first son, whom he had given his own name to and the name of his father, had been showing rather impressive power level potential whilst in the actual capsule, the other one, well, let's just say he had higher hopes for them. It must have been, without a doubt, coming from the side of the boy's mother. Yes, that's right, it was her fault. How else could he explain such a dramatic difference in power levels? On one hand, he already had an heir, so he shouldn't be that bothered about this situation, not all that much. But deep inside, the king knew that his subjects would be whispering behind his back, that his position as king would have been endangered. He couldn't simply remove the problem. This way of dealing with that would have been good for the lower castes, but this, if he were to do that, it would make him look weak. But what could you do? This disappointing runt would be far too weak to even conquer a planet of his own, let alone grow up to become a respectable Saiyan general. But then again, the enemies of the king could use this boy as leverage against him. Even worse, some of their allies could do that as well. If this runt were in the field and performed poorly, how would that reflect on Vegeta III? He shuddered at the very thought of Cold holding his son hostage. It wouldn't touch him on an emotional level, no, that wouldn't be the issue. It would just render him a weak leader. Instead, he wished to radiate confidence. He was looking through the map of the northern area of the galaxy. It would have been remote enough to keep him away from all of the threats that could endanger his very own integrity. Indeed, there existed a planet that was habitable and would be suitable. Planet 4032-877 to be exact. And according to the data the Saiyans took from the Tuffles, it was inhabited, but the locals hadn't invented spaceflight just yet. They were also a bit, superstitious, but his son could use that to his advantage. Hopefully, if he's not strong, he'd at least be smart. Not something highly regarded within Saiyan society, but once he grew up, he could at least become an advisor for his brother should he return, and dominate the planet with the strength of his mind. That would sound acceptable, but he would certainly need some muscle to back it up. It wasn't a very Saiyan thing to do, thought King Vegeta, but if he could spin this idea well enough, his people would accept this decision. So yes, that would be his final decision. Send that disappointment there, to that planet. Maybe if he is allowed to thrive, he could be at least a little bit useful. If he died, well, that was a risk the king was willing to take. And nobody would have told the king that they were unwilling to participate in the ways of the people that he had dictated. Yes, sending his own progeny like the common folk to show how connected he was to the warriors. Yes, indeed. That would give him even more popularity, relatability. King Vegeta knew that he was a little bit vain, but he was also aware that, from time to time, a dissident could easily stir the pot and stir his people away from his rule, cause trouble. It was never a major concern, mind you, but with the likes of the Cold Force controlling them more and more by the day, he could not risk having his people united against him. After all, he didn't want to look like the Saiyan who kept selling his people to the devil. This was just a means to get stronger and to make his people indispensable. One day, they would understand, and he would be the king of the most influential vassal states of the Cold Force there ever was. Soon, one day, maybe, some of those descendants of his might seize the opportunity and gain the imperial throne for themselves in the name of King Vegeta III. Yes, that sounded nice for the future. But for now, there was this little helpless creature that sadly was his youngest son. He looked to his capsule at the small, weak-looking fin down there. He shook his head. "Send him away to 4032-877, he ordered his scientists. "If he cannot survive there, he is not worth our time." The baby nervously stirred in its sleep. and the king gave it one final look. "Do not fail me, Tarble." That was the last time the two would see each other, as King Vegeta's kingdom fell apart, like the house of cards it always was. There is an old legend here on planet Earth, the legend about the turtle and the crane. It was once said that the turtle and the crane were as close to one another as brothers. Both of them were apparently students of the sky itself, which taught them its wisdom. It is said that once dark clouds came and covered the sky, the crane would lose faith in it. The turtle, however, stood within the storm, seeing all of its terrifying might close hand. He saw the morning come, the new hope. The crane, however, became the creature of the night, always looking into the stars seeking bad omens. And one of those omens had just fallen next to his house. Master Shen was irritated. Not only did his last two students prove to be a complete waste of time, he also needed to listen to his brother Tao, bragging about his recent successes. Apparently, there was a new big player in the market that was giving him a lot of money for his services. To make matters worse, it seemed that the sky had started to fall. "What on earth was that?" Shen jumped on his chair, and Tao was barely grimacing. "Probably a meteor. It is summer, and those things sometimes fall from the sky." "It could have hit my house. I need to assess the damage. Maybe it hit my property, so maybe, yes, I can get some money out of my insurance policy." Fragments of space rock can be worth a fortune in of itself. We should sell it. "I might sell it, because it is next to my house, and since it's next to my house, I get all the money." The crane master scoffed. "You wouldn't even know where to start seeking a potential investor or buyer. We are splitting it, if you would wish to have my help." "No, we are not." Shen was already out of time. It seemed that this space phenomena had damaged some nearby trees. Oh no, he enjoyed his night walks over there. His brother followed in his footsteps like a shadow. He hated it when he did that. Even though they were of the same flesh and blood, he never wanted to have Tao behind his back. In fact, he barely wanted to have anything to do with him. He was a professional assassin, and who knows when he would go after his dear old brother, especially when money was involved. And to be fair, given the opportunity, Shen would have probably done the same. "That wasn't a particularly large one," Tao smirked. "We were lucky. Otherwise, it might have hurt us. I would have probably survived, of course, but you, brother, you are always the more delicate of the two." "Shut up and listen. Do you hear that?" Shen's ears moved a little bit. "This sound. It's the sound of a crying infant." When they moved closer to the impact zone, their expressions changed. It wasn't a falling star. It looked like a vessel. "Maybe it's a satellite," Tao suggested curiously. "Do you know any satellites that can cry?" Shen scoffed, his steps more careful. He slowly approached the object, and his skin paled. "Tao? What is it, Shen?" Even Tao was getting a little bit apprehensive here. I think that's an alien." Tarble of the Saiyans. That's what his master called him. According to what he had been told, his alien parents had left him under the tutelage and care of the great crane hermit Master Shen, the most powerful martial arts teacher in the universe. Apparently, a message had been left with him containing these facts and instructions to follow to the letter, with of course some basic information about his race and whatnot. "The moon thing," as the master liked to call it. Tarble always dreamt of seeing this recording one day, to hear the voice of his father, but sadly, to keep his cover, the brother of his mentor had to take his pod to people which he called the army. Well, the young Saiyan wasn't surprised. In all those old movies that he was rarely allowed to watch in uncommon moments of respite, the military was always wary of otherworlders, so it would be understandable for them to be a little bit careful. Also, he had a feeling that Mr. Tao didn't really like him. He once overheard a part of a conversation between the mercenary and the master, in which the younger of the brothers suggested that maybe they should just give this little freak to the science division of the army to see what they will find in there. The master thankfully refused, as he was more interested in training him, which was a great relief. Initially, he was being told that he was a bit of a disappointment, but ever since the moon incident number 1, his mentor changed the tactics regarding his training, and the progress that he was showing after that was at an acceptable pace. But Shen wanted more students. Tarble took up a lot of his time, but having him in better control allowed him to have space for a couple of more pupils. Well, that and the school's finances were starting to look a little bit, on the anemic side. Apparently, the money that his parents paid was starting to wear thin, so to speak, and the poor boy had no way of suspecting that the original source of this wealth could have been somewhere else in terms of its sourcing. But even a harsh mentor like Shen saw a little bit of pride in his student when he first was able to use the infamous Dodon Ray. That was a bit of a breakthrough for Tarble, and he was even allowed 15 minutes of movie time that night. Tarble was very happy about that. Maybe one day he could become a true master of the Crane School and return to his parents as a fully fledged warrior. His mentor told him that they wouldn't be back for him unless he became the mightiest in the galaxy. So he understood that Shen had to be harsh. He was doing all of this out of goodness of his heart and in order to help his student fulfill his destiny. One day, he would make both him and his parents proud. The Crane Hermit had mixed feelings about the boy's behavior. On one hand, he was extremely loyal and obedient, but on the other, he was rather soft and far too kind towards strangers. This wasn't too bad for Shen himself, as he enjoyed having someone who, no matter how hard he pushed him, remained nice, amiable, and didn't have a lot of will to fight back. If he had become angry, it could have resulted in significant harm. Also, he could thank Tarble for all of the expansions that he had made in his dojo. After all, the money that the brothers got from selling his vessel to the Red Ribbon Army was quite substantial. Tao said something about them perhaps starting their own space program with the proceeds, but Shen didn't really care for that sort of thing. But it was true that he was quite lavish with his money. It would have been nice to train Tarble to win the tournament, but he couldn't rely just on him. The boy was a hidden powerhouse, obviously, but he also needed someone with the right mindset to back him up. And since he finally started to make some basic progress on that front, he could allow himself to expand his horizons and not have the alien boy take up all of his training time. Particularly, he needed to impart more fundamental knowledge about the world. Of course, naturally tailored to his personal objectives. But still, homeschooling a child was no easy task. Yet those Saiyans were unusually mature, and thankfully, Tarble wasn't much of a crier when he was little especially. He was quite curious when Tao announced though that he might have found some new recruits for his school. He appeared early. Following him were two figures, one rather small and the other slightly taller. What Tarble could see from afar looked rather interesting. The smaller of the boys was rather pale. His comrade, however, had another striking feature. A third eye. Boy, I thought I told you to clean the training room. You'll be training together with these two, starting today. Shen then coughed to get his attention, as if he hadn't had it already. Oh, I'm sorry, Master, but I've already done that. I've never met someone my age before. Is this what regular Earthling children look like? The Crane Hermit looked through the window and grimaced. The small one's particularly creepy if you ask me, but as I said, do not judge the coin for its head, but for what you can buy with it. Soon there was a characteristic knock on the door. Mercenary Tao only knocked once. Like an obedient servant, Tarble rushed toward the door to open it for their guests. Tarble, is my brother home? Yes, he is. He's awaiting our news. Tao stepped inside, just ignoring the rest of that sentence. The other two boys followed instead, with only the smaller of the two paying any curious attention to them. The three-eyed one seemed to try and mimic the movement of the mercenary, trying to watch his every single flicker and reflex. He tried to radiate the same aura of confidence too, but it looked rather comical when a preteen boy was trying to do that. Shen made a slow and dramatic entrance. He wanted to look more menacing to his new students. Ah, there you are. Master Shen, it's a great honor to meet the brother of the legend. The three-eyed boy started to talk, but Tao gave them a rather sharp look. Tenshinhan, you will not speak when not allowed. Yes, Master. So, these are the two orphans that I told you about. I do think they have potential, though the smaller one, Chiaotsu, seems to be better in regards to his mental capacity. Mental, you say? Shen raised an eyebrow. Show him. The small pale child raised his hand and closed his eyes. Suddenly, one of the chairs in the dojo started to float. Shen nodded, smiling to himself. A telepath. Nice, nice. And what made you two agree to my brother's proposal?" It looked like Tenshinhan wanted to say something, but Tao spoke for him. "They witnessed one of my assassinations, you see." "Leaving witnesses? Are you growing soft in your old age, brother?" The crane hermit chuckled. Tao's face was serious as ever. "I do not." He walked straight to his brother and gave him a cold glare. "I assure you, they are surprisingly competent. So I propose a little test. How about we check them against this little freak of yours that you so cling to?" Shen looked at Tarble, who hadn't noticed the insult. "I would be glad to. It's an honor to meet you both. I am Tarble. Welcome to the dojo." He offered Tenshinhan a hand, but the Triclops initially didn't accept it. "You can say hello. After all, you will be colleagues." Shen nodded at Tenshinhan. He shook his hand and said nothing. After that, everyone moved toward the training room. Tao signaled the start of the first sparring session between the two of them and Tarble. There was a lot of chaotic tenacity, with Tarble trying to dodge to the best of his abilities. They were rather unrefined, but they were working well together. Chiaotsu was clouding his mind, whilst Tenshinhan, well, he was just beating him mercilessly. "I am not very impressed, brother. You've lost your teaching edge." "Oh, have I? Tarble, I may allow you now to defend yourself." It was like a switch had gone on in Tarble's mind. Momentarily, Tenshinhan's elbow landed in his hand, and the Saiyan boy gave him a stern look. Then, the Triclops was flying toward his friends, who tried to ease his crash with telepathy, but the opponent was already there, as quick as a shadow, and kicked him from behind. When they tried to make a single attack, he dodged. Finally, he caught Tenshinhan's leg, and in the most polite way possible, asked his master, "Shall I break his leg?" There was a terrified look on the young Triclops' face, and silence fell across the room. We hope you liked the third April Fool's What If we had. As you probably might have noticed, we're trying to make them very different stylistically. However, they may have some connections. Stay tuned for story number 4 coming later this week. Once again, all of them will have at least a part 2, and you will get to decide which one of them will get a part 3. Thank you, Bagel Ninja 9982, for this idea. We shall see you all next time. Catch you later!